Yeah, so they'll introduce this and this, they'll say something and I'll say, thanks for the introduction. Yeah, so my name's Devansh Jain. And today, we'll be talking about um,
I think you're going to move that. Right? You're going to start with what you're talking about.
Yeah. Maybe I can roll these two slides into one.
Mhm.
Yeah, so today we were going to be talking about user story, jobs to be done and user story mapping in the context of product discovery. Then we'll be doing some team exercises, and then there's some bonus material at the end if we have time for that. A little bit about me. I'm Devansh Jain. I'm a former engineer and product manager. I'm the founder of Nokaroshi.tech, which is a product, whatever, like an incubator or something like that. And yeah, so the idea is by the end of the session, you'll understand both jobs to be done and user story mapping in the context of product discovery and why they're foundational to each to every product role. We're going to talk about what these things are, when to use them, how to use them, very critically why they're useful. So what are the basic kind of principles that make these two things work in the way that they do? And then the last one is, if you want to know more about either of these things, where can you go and find some good resources? So why use these aspects of product discovery? So why are we focusing on these two things? So as a PM, like what is it that you're trying to do here? Like why are we having this talk? What's the goal? In his inspired book, Marty Kagan basically writes, as product managers, we're trying to build products that add value to people's lives and also work for the business, right? So that's the goal.
Yeah.
And then in order to do that goal, we need to understand first what the user wants, then build something that gives them value, then have them use that thing, and then finally make some money, right? And so the discovery part, really, the user discovery part really pertains to understanding what the user wants and building something that gives value to them. And we won't talk too much about the other two things, but that's why. So the reason that we want to pick these two goals is because they're the first two steps in any kind of good outcome. And this slide itself is actually a great example of both jobs to be done and user story mapping. And you'll see how when we talk about them. So jobs to be done. So let's start off with some examples. The kind of jobs to be done was created in the 70s by these group of people, and there's actually this talk that you can hear. The example, yeah, this doesn't work. So what is jobs to be done? Jobs to be done is a framework that basically asks you to interrogate or asks you to think about your product as something that is being hired to do some job for the user. And so in my definition, it's basically trying to understand the user's needs and feelings as the first step to building a solution for them. The classic example of this, so that sounds kind of vague. What does this actually look like? So the classic example is the fast food chains wanted to improve the sales of their milkshakes. And they tried to make like a chunkier milkshake, a chocolatier milkshake, but sales didn't go up. They called these focus groups, and they asked some questions, made those improvements, nothing happened. So then somebody had this idea of, okay, let's apply jobs to be done to this. And then they went and studied actually why people are buying milkshakes. And they discovered that more than 50% of the milkshakes are bought before 8 a.m. They're bought by people who are buying the milkshakes and then leaving the restaurant, and always by people who are driving alone. And so these guys talked to the users and actually figured out that the reason that they're buying them is because they have like a 20 or 30 minute long commute. And they need something to entertain them and to do while they're on this commute. And also they know that they'll be hungry by the time they get to work. So those are the two kind of things that the user cared about. And once you understand, so now rather than thinking of a milkshake as whatever, a competitor like a burger or something, you realize that the milkshake is being hired to entertain and provide some kind of feeling of not being hungry to the user. And so now it becomes much easier to kind of improve it. You could make it, you could make it a less like a spill-proof cup. You could kind of even advertise in a way that made this like a good way to entertain yourself. You could allow pre-ordering, things like that. So once you understand the job that you're trying to do, it becomes a lot easier. Another more kind of relevant example was I was working at this company, and I was working with this company, and we had an executive who kept asking the engineer to build customized reports for them. And so there's one engineer that all he would do is sit and write multiple reports and build it into our system. And but every week or every couple of weeks, the executive would come back with more requests. So this was obviously not a great kind of use of, and the stakeholder was also upset because it was taking more than a week to get the report, but that's the minimum amount of time it takes to like push something to production, right? So then I went and talked to the person, and I tried to understand, what was causing them to ask for these reports. What was the trigger? And essentially, I'm trying to understand like what job was he hiring this report to do. And so it turned out that this executive hadn't basically used Excel in a while. And okay, so there was a sort of monthly meeting of leadership, and the stakeholder had to present some kind of numbers to that leadership meeting, and didn't know how to use Excel. And so in his previous role in a big bank, he had just had a team that he would ask for these reports. And so he was doing the same thing here. He was asking the engineer for certain kinds of numbers, certain columns, things like that. The engineer was then going and creating like custom template reports that could have been run millions of times and for any user, rather than just building just using like Excel, because the guy didn't know how to use Excel either. But once you discover this, now what it allowed you to do is, okay, he just needs this report one time. He needs columns to be added and things like that. And so we were able to just like write some macros for him and edit them when he needed to. So now he got his result right away. The engineer was freed up to do other work. And it was just an overall much better solution, only because we understood what it was that the user was really trying to do. So that's another place in which it's cropped up. So when should you use it? You should use it when you're basically trying to figure out where the users are coming from. So if you're developing a new product, you want to make sure that you understand why the users will come and use it. If the users are not using your product, it's a good kind of way to understand why that's not filling their needs. And when users are misusing your product, it's actually a really great way to discover jobs to be done that you hadn't thought of, that your users are now using your product for. How do you use it? This is a lot of words.
Yeah.
I don't like this. Okay, so I'll change this later. How do you use it? You understand your users' underlying needs and feelings. Yeah, so there's basically 3 questions you can ask. One is competing solutions. So what did the user hire the last time that they wanted to do this? And that'll give you a good kind of insight into what's important to them. Broader context and first, so where are they when they feel this need? Maybe just first impression. These two are kind of overlapping. So where's the user? Like, what is going on with the user when they first have this need? What are all the external kind of forces that act upon them? And how does the user feel when this need is not met? That kind of stuff. So just asking these questions. Oh, it's a little rough, but yeah. So ask those questions. Look for strong feelings. Whenever a strong feeling is being presented, either negative or positive, it's a good sign that some kind of user need is being brought to the surface. And there's this really good example from a compensation design sprint where they were this company had a policy of basically getting a new CEO every 2 to 3 years. And then they would have attrition in the senior ranks because people would realize that they had no hopes of any kind of promotion for the next 2 to 3 years. And so they were trying to figure out a better way to structure that conversation when someone didn't get the CEO role. And so they thought of like a bunch of solutions, and they went away, and none of the solutions yielded the positive outcome that they were hoping for. But then the question was asked, like, was there a big feeling in any room? And, was there energy in any room? And by energy, it means like, were there emotions coming to the fore? Even if you didn't lead to a successful solution, focusing on what was triggering even strong negative emotions shows that you've surfaced some kind of need that the user really cares about. In this case, you haven't been able to meet it in a satisfactory way, but that need is kind of what's driving the user there. So even a negative, a negative response to a strong negative response can be a really good sign as to where you should dig for finding needs. Yeah, so you'll often, okay, she's changed the slide context. Um, you'll see jobs to be done and user needs being captured in many different formats in different companies. So don't get confused by that. It can be in the form of customer problem statements. It can be, sometimes they're called opportunities by certain organizations, and themes and theme-based roadmaps. These all just kind of point to user needs, and that's what you're trying to surface here. Yeah. So let's talk about a few more examples. Maybe I'll cut this one out. I think this was a bit long. Okay, we'll come back to this. Yeah, the housing development. Okay, so there are these somebody puts up a condo and they're trying to sell to these people who are downsizing from homes. And they found that the sales did not go as well as they wanted. And so then they start talking to the users, and what they heard a few times from people who did buy homes is, when I figured out what to do with my dining table, that's when I was convinced that, to pull the trigger. And so they did some more research, and what they realized was that the dining table has this huge emotional significance. And people who are downsizing don't want, like, that's a big part of that decision is, and in a larger context, there's a lot of stuff that they're having to give up, right? Because they had a bigger home and now they have a smaller home. And one really important part is the dining table, because they don't want to give it to a stranger because it's such an emotionally kind of charged object. At the same time, not every condo can accommodate the kind of dining table they may have had in a home. And so given this insight that really what the user was trying to do was hire this condo to help them downsize and move into a new kind of phase of their life, right? And so what the housing development people did was they set up, firstly, they changed some designs so that you could accommodate slightly larger dining tables. They gave a sorting room so that when you moved into the condo, you could bring all your excess stuff, use keep it in the condo in the sorting room, and then either dispose of it or decide where it would go in your new home. And they also offer 2 years of free storage, right? But this and this worked really well. Like, they got a bunch of sales and more than managed to cover their costs. And it was because they understood the underlying need. It was not housing that they were providing to this kind of user. What they were providing was a way to transition from full home ownership into a new phase of life, right? And so the more you were able to understand that need, the more you could customize and craft your solution and provide these kind of additional things to make that process easier. And so I think actually this is one of the ways in which jobs to be done kind of intersects with something that we use a lot in kind of product work, which is user personas, right? User personas basically used demographic information and kind of role-based information to decide what a user kind of wants or needs, right? But actually, I think using jobs to be done in conjunction with this will yield a richer understanding of what the user is trying to do. For example, just like a really simple one is, your needs as an Uber user who's trying to make it for a 9 o'clock job appointment are probably very different from your needs as someone who's, say, coming back from a party, right? So I had a job interview and all I wanted was the Uber to come quickly, to drop me there, and for the person not to kind of, talk too much, maybe just because I was trying to like be mentally in a good space. Whereas I was coming back from wine country, and what I wanted, and we got this Uber, which is like a really nice car. They had like water, water bottles on offer. The DJ, like the driver played great music. So even a single user can have different jobs at different times. And this leads to a lot more nuanced understanding of how to help them. In kind of financial software, like the person who's administering the administrator may have multiple roles. It might be the same person, but they may be using it as an end user. They may be using it as kind of a team lead. They may be using it as an administrator. And so keeping the fact that they have different jobs they want to do in each different role will also help you kind of craft a good journey for them. And so just it yields this extra dimension to user personas, where it's not only that I'm this person, but this is the job that I need to be done right now, and allowing you to craft those kind of narratives and user flows based on that job. So how does it help? It helps you kind of, the most foundational thing, it helps you understand what success looks like. And this is for the user, right? Like, what does success for you in the product look like? And then also that'll often end up being your key KPI, is how many times can we help users succeed achieve successful outcomes.
Mhm.
So it could be something like get a loan if that's what your product does. It could be something like, go on a date if that's what your product does. So that's it really like does, and that's the very basis of everything, right? Like what does success look like for the user? You have a higher ability to play within the solution space. The reason for this is that actually jobs to be done are fairly stable.
Mhm.
There's only like some limited number of jobs to be done or whatever. They tend to be fairly stable over time. For example, transport is a stable job to be done. I need to go somewhere. But the solution has changed from horses to cars to electric cars and perhaps Uber Copter in the future, right? If you're squarely focused on the job to be done, you can be flexible in the solutions that you make, craft for it. And it leads to, following from this long-term solution agnostic thinking. So another example is kind of the need to be entertained while on the go. Was first met with a Discman, then with the CD player, then with an iPod, and now it's like these wireless headphones and a watch or something. And it'll go somewhere else. That need won't go away. So if you're focused on the need, you can always figure out how to craft new and innovative solutions. So that's what jobs to be done helps with. So why does it work? This is really key to understand, right? It's not good enough that it works, but what are the principles at play that make it an effective tool? So the first one is very implicitly in kind of this approach is that your whole goal is to understand the user's needs and feelings. And the better you can do this, the better product you can craft for them. And so just in the way that it's orchestrated, it just forces you to think about these things. And feelings and the needs are the basis of all behavior. The reason we do anything is because we have some kind of need and we're trying to meet it. And the better you understand it, the more effectively you can change behavior. Yeah, so that's where it works. These things have to be changed. Any questions about jobs to be done?
So that's the end of yours.
That's the first part.
Oh, okay.
Then there's users.
Oh, okay.
Is that?
But this is like how many minutes? It's pretty
an
long.
hour long.
It's an hour long.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing is it'll be good to add a few visuals.
Okay.
Like just pictures, right?
Yeah. So here I've done that.
Especially when you are giving examples, you just put the audience in, like when you give the Uber example, just flash Uber. In your two examples, just pictures. Just put pictures. So they're in that space. So that would be very helpful. Yeah, and I think like since it's an hour long, it'll be good to have something interactive where you ask questions and try to get some answers, like very simple questions, but just just keeping those keeping the audience in what do you call it? Yeah, they're just not zoning out. So that would be good to have a few interactive things. And yeah, and I think the example, maybe like whatever examples you're giving, maybe you should just like structure it a little bit more.
Situation, action, result.
Yeah, in the sense like what do you want the audience to take out of this example? So and then start from there and that will be a little more helpful.
Close the loop.
Yeah, close the loop. But the example, like the positioning of the example is perfect. Like whenever you want to give an example, that's pretty good.
Okay.
But I think this structure that example
Yeah.
would be nice. And so at the end of this, you want them to take away the importance of jobs to be done when thinking about prioritizing, not prioritizing, about thinking about which feature to build, right? Is that like
or just like when you're trying to do anything, like understand why the user's coming to you? Like what is it, like actually, yeah.
So it's a framework to help you get to why a user wants a feature. Okay. So that's what you want them to take away, right?
Yeah. Let me add it here. The takeaway. When you don't understand, ask what job is the user trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing you want to do is after this, once you, how do you break that, right? So now that through this process, you have like what you want to build. Now, how do you break it up into? So user story mapping is mostly operational, right?
I think it can be a lot more than that also. Okay, so let's say, all right, let's say, okay, so I'll do this a little quicker. So what is user story mapping? There's an official definition which says, you can read this stuff. Yeah, but for me, it's just a flow chart which visually describes how a user moves through an experience. So this is one example of a user story map, and we'll see a few more. So user story maps can be really, really simple, and they can be hand-drawn. Okay, this is one that I put together in half an hour with some kind of client, and it really helped us identify which parts of the flow we hadn't thought about, and maybe we should. They can be very simple. This is from the design sprint book. You can make it really easy. So even if you have a very complex product, you can get a very quick high-level overview of it. They can be complex. So this is like a larger company that has a bunch of things that they do and lots of interactions, but still you can basically go along the top and chart what the user is doing in each step of their interaction with your product. And then the yellow stickies to the bottom are what steps they have to take in order to meet that goal. So you see that same thing here, which is this is the backbone that's going across the top. So it's how the user is going through your product. And then these are the details of how they're doing that step. So that's what this kind of thing looks like. User story maps can inform roadmaps and releases. So you have, you can slice what steps you're willing to make in a certain release, what steps you're willing to leave out, but still what you want at the end is some kind of outcome that the user wants, right? There's some kind of job to be done that's getting accomplished. And then that is essentially enables you to do kind of outcome-centric road mapping to make sure that everything that you're doing aligns to the user being able to do something that they want. It can be physical. And again, we see that kind of there's a high level story going left to right, and then there's details and going down the bottom. Just one quick example of something that I worked on a few weeks ago. This whole user story map took half an hour. It was a new client. I didn't know what the product looked like. They didn't have any specs. And so all we did was talk about, there's an acquisition phase, and then they come to their product. And what does that look like? So we discovered, that it starts off with the employer, and then some steps happen. These are what the emails look like. These are the steps the user takes. If you notice here, there's actually two different flows to get to the same thing. So that's maybe something you should think about. You have screenshots here. As you build your own, you can add things like integrations. I've added integrations in the past, data models that were affected. So really what you can do is, the key is that on top is what the user is doing, and then everything else flows through that. So you can talk about stakeholders, legal considerations. You can add whatever detail you want at the bottom, but you're always kind of focused on what the user is trying to do. So when should you use it? I feel like this one. So when should you use it? Whenever you're trying to understand a new product, an existing product, you're creating a new product, trying to create a shared understanding of a new or existing product, and when you're just not sure where to start. Just like, do a user story map and try to figure out what goal you want and what steps you need to take, and that'll kind of get you started as well. I should quoted this. Yeah, I think here, okay, let me just finish this. Yeah, how does it help? It focuses the team on a user's focus, a user's experience through so you won't lose focus of what the users yeah, so basically everything you do will kind of come back to that. You can gain alignment by stakeholders. Oh, there's a slide missing here. That slide. This slide.
So these are essentially two independent. I mean, not independent.
They are two independent. Yeah.
But there is two different frameworks, right?
Yeah,
because,
they're just complementary, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one. This creates like shared understanding because we can read the same words and say the same words and have different pictures in our minds. But when you draw it and try to, get everyone to see how their pieces fit together, then it makes a lot more sense. So yeah, drawing is a way of achieving shared understanding. It reveals what discrepancies in understanding the team had, and then working together in a visual way to make sure that those are kind of mitigated. Yeah. So what are the benefits? Yeah, gain alignment among stakeholders and engineers and everyone else. And then the last one I'll figure out. Okay, why do they work? Wait, what the fuck? User story mapping works because we're better at speaking and listening than we are at reading and writing. So writing large documents sometimes takes a lot of time and becomes very hard to read as well. Pictures have a higher bandwidth than words. And so we can just convey more information about what we're thinking through pictures. It's easier to correct mistakes than it is to articulate truths. The next time, like you write something badly in a user story map, people will want to correct you. But when you ask them to present like an accurate picture, it's really hard. But just write down the wrong stuff and they'll fix it for you. Yeah, that's it. And basically like anchors us on the user experience. That's why it works. Yeah, so that's it. And then there's an exercise. So now let's do the exercise. So tell me about a time when you bought something and you weren't happy with some aspect of your journey.
Oh, so this is our internet. Everyone will go back and
yeah. Like, do you have like something?
Some aspect of your experience.
Oh, but you weren't happy with your experience.
Yeah. And I think the latest thing would be just annoying how to like open shit from packaging.
Okay, so what was the specific thing?
There was just like some tool which came in that it was really hard to open the package to get it out.
Okay, so you bought
like
a tool.
Yeah, I bought a tool.
Yeah.
It was delivered. I got it. I'm excited to use it. It took me forever to open it without hurting myself.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say that's like the most recent thing, one of the Amazon orders.
Yeah, so the job to be done there is, I guess, you just want that tool. Like you're hiring someone to come and give you that tool, right?
Huh.
And you want some kind of outcome that comes from the tool.
Yeah. That's one. This
a hard one.
Yeah. I think in this mainly it's more of like how do you like the job to be done here is an effective packaging system.
No, that's the solution. The job to be done is you want this tool, right?
Okay.
And so your alternatives were you could either go and buy this tool at a shop.
Oh, okay.
Or you can hire someone to go buy the tool for you at the shop. Or I guess what you did is order it from Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason that the Amazon thing didn't work is because you weren't able to open it. So I guess, if we try to map your user story, it goes like, oh, get tool and like get package in the mail, open package, use tool, be happy. Right?
Yeah.
And then where we're screwing up right now is
like as soon as you get the tool,
yeah,
that's where your emotion is.
right.
Yeah.
Because you're not able to get access to the tool.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they could make it either easier packaging, or they could remove the packaging, which is I think something that they do.
Oh
will
yeah,
do
they
now.
do that.
So
you just have to pay extra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll get like a whatever that kind of work. No.
Yeah, I think this will work. This prompt would work.
I think it's wrong.
In terms of like people giving you examples and then you just like mapping the two aspects.
Yeah.
Of what you thought. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah.
So then this happens, then you can use jobs to be done and use story mapping anywhere. You can make it to make a presentation, you can make it to make a tool, you can use it just about even when you're kind of going on new engagements and speaking with clients, like understand what it is that they're really needing out of that engagement. Right? One thing is, yes, they need to do some work and that's fine, but is the partner that you're or is the is the manager you're working with, do they have a promotion cycle coming up? Like, do they need to show immediate impact on some kind of key metrics? Are they hiring you to make themselves look better for their manager? Or do they have some project they really care about and they genuinely want kind of a long-term good outcome or like good foundational behavior? Like, what is it that they're really looking for beyond you making the product better, right? So it can be used in all these places, and there's a lot more to learn. There's multiple books about both of these tools. They can be used in a variety of, like, a huge number of contexts. User story mapping, especially, is just like you can use it everywhere. And so this is, and part of the reason why we talk about this, because it's such a foundational tool, and therefore there is a lot to learn. The best way to learn is to try them out. Just see if you have opportunity in one of your current engagements to try them and see how that goes for you. It's an experiment, right? Do these tools help you do better? And maybe they do. They have helped me. If we have time, we can watch this Mad Men clip. But if not, these are some resources, and I think that's it. Mansi, back to you.
I think that's not a bad flow at all.
Yeah. Now I'll rewatch this later
and just stop recording first.
I have to end the meeting.
It's in mode though.